We have a big oil spill down there. We probably should have seen it coming. It came a couple of weeks after Obama opened up more territory for deep drilling. He's taken a lot of heat, whether it's justified or not. Certainly the bloggers, the conservative talk show hosts are blaming him for it all, or at least a chunk of it. What's your take on how he's handling the Gulf, what he might ought to do? Our previous guest said there should be more tankers out there sucking up oil. What's your take if you were running the show, Don?
Well, first of all, he got off on the wrong foot by not being as visible. He was thinking about it and planning about it when it first came about, but he did it all in the White House talking to experts. He should have been right down on those beaches immediately, showing compassion and showing concern, which took him weeks to do. I think the only thing you can really fault him for was not having cleaned house at the Minerals Management Services, which is a true holdover from the Bush years, which is a corrupt body that's been in bed with the oil industry. And the MMS, part of the Department of the Interior, really permitted this to happen because they never checked for an emergency plan from BP or from any of the other oil companies. And the fact that MMS was corrupt was known, and they should have been among the first to go in the first 6 months of the administration, and they were not. Having said that, we know that the real villain, obviously, is still BP, which has been lying from day one, and unfortunately, the government believes some of their lies because the government does not have the resources to deal with it, did not have the resources to deal with it. MMS should have been the crux of those resources. And
what do you think will happen? I know Obama is supposed to meet with BP this week. It seems like initially some governors like Jindal in Louisiana were kind of critical of the government, but it seems like they are kind of they're not bad-mouthing the government, and there seems like the local governments and the federal government, Obama, are seemingly, he's not being attacked so much. But what do you think is going to come out of these discussions, or what should happen?
Well, there obviously have to be better plans for the cleanup. Everybody's banking on the oil being capped off finally by drilling those relief wells.
Right.
If you believe in pray that they work by August. Nobody yet has a sound cleanup plan because nobody knows how much oil is there. People have been lying to each other, and the government doesn't know a hell of a lot more, and they don't know what experts to listen to. This is a real conundrum. Obama finally got around to agreeing with Jindal to build berms, these little islands that would capture it. Did it much too late because Obama was listening to the Corps of Army Engineers, which said it won't do any good. Well, it probably will do good, and it certainly makes eminent sense to do it. If they fail, it's something that better to try that and fail than try some of those half-ass schemes that they've been trying. So I think the government is to be faulted, but if you're talking about blame, it's obviously 80% BP, 20% the government.
And BP has got a lot of Americans involved, so it's not just a British deal. I know that's an issue. We'll talk about that later if we have to.
Yeah.
Let's quickly give me your take on the finality, or at least where we're at on the health care legislation that did get through. Any good? More to go? How's it going to play out for Obama in the elections?
Well, there are many aspects that are just kicking in now, and Obama is preparing a massive, basically public relations and information campaign to let people know what they're getting out of it. The seniors who were worried about Medicare cutbacks can now start to applaud the fact that the so-called donut hole in payments on on drugs will be closed. They're starting to pass out those checks. It's a matter of how quickly and how well they can sell the benefits. people have young men and women up to age 26 in college or elsewhere can stay on their parents' insurance. This is another great thing, and it's available immediately. Many of the other benefits
I like that one.
Yeah, many of the other benefits don't kick in for 2 or 3 years. So it's the sales job that has to be done, because there are many, many good aspects to the health care bill. It's not the bill you and I wanted, of course, single payer or a public option or whatever. But I think the objections can be overcome with a successful sales job between now and election time. And that's what everything is focused on, is the November elections.
Okay, Don, I'm going to move us along. Let's talk about elections. We got a lot of stuff I'd like to cover. The recent elections, there's Alvin Gross, the Democratic candidate in South Carolina for the Senate. There's some hanky-panky going on there. There's Harry Reid being challenged by the Tea Party. Blanche Lincoln knocked off the more progressive candidate. We've got California with a whole new election scheme. We've got Charlie Crist in Florida. Let's start with South Carolina.
Well, this gentleman who won the primary was clearly a setup. We don't yet know who did the setting up, but it was unnecessary. Jim DeMint is golden in South Carolina. We don't want him to be, but why they had to bother pulling a trick like this when no Democrat could possibly win that race, but they had to, they risk now the ignominy of interfering in an election and somebody ultimately going to jail because of this stupid ploy, which was quite unnecessary.
Right.
I mean, this guy won his race with 100,000 votes, while the winner alone was getting, the winner on the Republican side was getting 400,000 votes. It's an overwhelmingly Republican state at the moment, and they just don't have to do silly things like that.
Well, that's sometimes the bad guys deconstruct themselves. Let's hope that continues. How about Harry Reid? She's got to beat herself now. This woman who's running against Reid.
Well, this Tea Party candidate, Sharon Angle, has probably the most bizarre positions of any winning candidate that you can think of. I mean, apart from being opposed to Medicare and Social Security, she's a prohibitionist. She goes back to the shibboleths of the 50s from the John Birch Society by being against fluoridated water. When did you last hear a campaign against fluoridated water? This is a gift from the gods for Harry Reid.
Yeah, it is.
And he might have been able to eke a victory out of Sue Loudon, but if anything saves Harry Reid, who is very unpopular in his home state, if anything saves him, it's the fact that the Tea Partiers gave him this gift. And just as they probably wound up with the weakest candidate in Kentucky, I'm not sure Rand Paul is going to lose, but Rand Paul is going to have a much harder time than any normal conservative Republican in the state of Kentucky. So this kind of intra-party turmoil is a benefit to the Democrats. However, there is some intra-party turmoil going on the Democratic side. We look at the battle over Blanche Lincoln versus Bill Halter. Halter was the candidate of the progressive movement, the unions in Arkansas, and people thought he was going to win, and I think he might have won had the unions and the movement not been so boastful of the fact that they were coming in there with all their money and all their goods and that they were going to teach this lady a lesson. It gave Blanche Lincoln the ability to take the position of the hometown person who was being assaulted by outside agitators. And they still remember terms like outside agitators in places like Arkansas.